leadership and is the all and everything in all. Leadership is complex. Leadership is not something you can just come and adapt a certain style of leadership and feel that you have the best, because even in the value-based leadership there are weaknesses, there are disadvantages to it. So no one form of leadership style can be said to be the best of leadership. So when the First Lady is talking about value-based leadership, as much as that is very important and key in any leadership situation, we also would be looking at the context of leadership that we require and that should be in Nigeria to be able to say that, oh, we are having a good leadership system. All the leadership system, like when she said that, she may have been looking at creativity, productivity, because this value-based leadership will drive productivity to a large extent, because it will encourage, it's driven by the good value system. So you must have built a very good cultural values for you to apply this value system in your environment. When you do, it will motivate your employees or motivate citizens to follow you, and you are bound to achieve more if you are using a value-based leadership. And in the context of Nigeria, we are deficient in these areas to a very large extent, and I think that is the same thing former President Obasanjo is also saying, that there is deficit area of leadership, and that's one thing that we should look at on how to improve. And like I always say, the key is in the recruitment area. How is our electoral system? How do we select our leadership? It's a very complex issue.
Okay, so before we go into the main topic, this is also, I would love to hear your take on this. Now, today on the papers, we saw that the IMF has lowered its 2024 growth forecast for Nigeria's economy to 2.9%, attributing the downgrade to weaker than expected economic activity in the first half of the year. Does this actually, you're smiling, is this reality on ground?
Because the way you put the question across, don't you know we have failed?
I need to know your perspective.
That was on a lighter note.
Yeah.
Now, seriously speaking, all indices, economic indices, would tell the story of Nigeria. We have come from January with a very high inflation rate that we seem to have had respite in the month of July, and it followed with a little decline in August. Then it spiked again. Now, the kind of inflation, when a country is running with such a high inflation rate, it's obvious that you're not doing well. The economy is not doing well. And in our own case, we are on the path of recovery, and government has put a lot of things in place, tightened both the monetary and the fiscal, not the fiscal, they have tightened the monetary policy so much, and of course we are still complaining about their spending, their expenditure, which is part of the reason that may be making us feel this impact of inflation the way we are feeling it.
You know that on one side of the mouth that they were talking about reducing the growth projection, they were also on the other side of the mouth, they're also talking about giving a thumbs up to the CBN for tightening the monetary policy.
Yes, because they know that what the CBN is doing is the path of growth. They are in the path of growth. That if they tighten up this like this, even though we don't completely agree when it came to that interest rate issue that keeps rising, even when we were seemingly making gains in the economy, that we would have thought they would have relaxed it and bring down the interest rate so that the cost of finance can be manageable for manufacturers to encourage productivity and so on. But they still had to keep the interest rate so high, and we feel it's not good for businesses in Nigeria, for SMEs in Nigeria, manufacturing concerns, the real sector of the economy, that it is not good for the real sector, that it's not going to encourage productivity in so much. So you now find that what we are having is that on the one hand, the CBN, they are recording success in the macro level, and in the micro level we are suffering so much, and that contradiction is something that it's only hope that we have, that if we continue and sustain the policies of government in this way, and government is doing what they can do to be more fiscally disciplined, that the economy will, if you ask me, I'll tell you 2025 will certainly be better than 2024, and that's about the same projection that
the IMF gave.
Yes.
So you're also of the opinion that, you know, we're just going to be managing for now. Eventually, there's light at the end of the tunnel because these policies put in place.
Yes, because you see a lot of growth in the macro level of the economy. You know, think about the foreign reserve. We have recorded such a high figure of the foreign reserve. Then look at what is in place, like this petroleum issue, the Dangote buying in Naira, and the likelihood that about 10 to 15% will be gained by Nigeria through if we do not continue importation of petroleum products. That if we produce petroleum product in Nigeria, we are selling in Nigeria, we are selling in Naira, we are buying in Naira, that it would help us to conserve our foreign exchange to a large extent. And if we do, that it would help the Naira to become more strengthened. And if the Naira becomes strengthened, you will see the exchange rate dropping as we enter December, January 2025. And January 2025, February 2025, if the exchange rate keeps dropping, if the Naira keeps gaining value in those months, then we are going to have a better year in 2025. So I just think the IMF, they are just stating the obvious.
I'm positive you have really instilled the optimistic, feeling in me. Okay, let's come to our major topic of discussion today. I know that you have just said this morning, and that's why I started with that leadership story, that we have a problem, deficit of leadership in the country. On the other hand, Obong Victor Atta described the 1999 constitution as a command structure imposed by a military regime which defiled the original principles of Nigeria's federalism. Some people are saying that even if you want to rejig the constitution, we still have a problem of leadership. But some others are saying that that constitution is the major hindrance. Do you believe that the Nigeria's current constitutional framework stifles good governance and development? And if so, what specific provisions would you recommend revisiting?
Yes, Sharon, you see, what Obong Victor Atta is saying, even Nigeria agrees with him completely. Everybody should agree with him regarding that constitution issue, because the 1999 constitution is not what it should be. Look at it from this way. We have a National Assembly well constituted, and you remember on the 1st of March 2022, they voted on about 68 bills. It was all about amendment of the Nigeria constitution. So if you are voting 68 bills to amend the constitution, that constitution is not good enough. It's obvious. Now, when you also want to look at what is inside the constitution, what should be and what shouldn't be, you begin to see that we have a lot of areas in the constitution that should be rejigged, especially on the area of resource control. Let me not call it resource control that Obong Victor Atta was really flagging, projecting in the country. Let us even look at it in terms of the federation account. That's in simple terms the sharing formula of the resources of Nigeria. So when you look at it that way, then you begin to see the criteria for this sharing. You see population becomes a criteria for sharing money. Equality of states becomes a criteria for sharing money. That on its own cannot drive productivity in a country. So you look at it, if we had time for me to explain, because when I talk about the Land Use Act, if you understand how this can affect the economy of a state, then you would know that those are things that we need to change in our constitution. You see the way the police are operating, then you know that if we had a state police that is likely to be better than the structure, that's a two-tier police system, would be far better than what we are having centralizing things in this manner.
Yeah.
If you want to look at it in terms of some certain clauses in the constitution, think about plea bargain, for example. It encourages corruption to a large extent, that you steal 1 billion naira and you go to pay 100,000 naira for as plea bargain. Oh, I'm guilty, but I can only pay 100,000 naira, and you are let off the hook. Those are not things that we should have in our constitution. With the way we spend money, that we allocate so much for pilgrimage, that the state funds pilgrimage activities. That's not what should be. You look at the quota system. Let's talk about the federal character things you hear, that discourages a meritocracy, that you are not running a merit-based system, that you just say, oh, we have employed somebody from Akwa Ibom, let's have another person from Cross River. Whether Cross River State has a candidate suitable or not. That's
something that the former president also mentioned, that where you're from shouldn't be an enemy of the country. Yes. It should be about merits, exactly. not about where you're from.
So those are the various misnomers that you have in the Constitution of Nigeria that would make a National Assembly sit down to, on a one day, pass 68 bills to amend that constitution. Look at it. How did we arrive at this constitution in Nigeria? Every country must be having a very solid constitution to run its system. When you hear of unwritten constitution, I'm sure you've heard that before, and you know that there's no country, don't tell me UK does that, but you know that there's no country that has unwritten constitution. All acts of government is written down. It's just that they may not have it in one booklet, like what you have in the UK, what you have maybe in Israel, that they don't have it in as a one document. So they call it unwritten constitution. But all constitution, all acts, all forms of law, what should guide the structure of governance in a country should be written down, and everybody understands that this is where we are going. That is why when Nigeria was amalgamated in 1914, the first steps that the colonialists took was to drive a way of making us have a constitution that gave rise to the I think Clifford Constitution of 1919. Okay, started in 1919. They call it 1922 Constitution, and it came up to the Richardson, the Maferson, and all that, all to the point that we had the Republican Constitution in 1963. That Republican Constitution was far better, in my own opinion anyway, to what we are having today. Why do I say so? One point I will raise in making that clear is that that constitution allowed for recognition of traditional rulers' council. Okay. Yes, in the Constitution of Nigeria. So their position was secured. They had secured in the Constitution. So no head of state or president will wake up and change a traditional ruler. They had their own constitutional right. So no state governor, no local government chairman will wake up one day and say, this traditional ruler, you are off. You know, all the things that we had, including the caliphate in Sokoto, how it was treated some years ago by a government in Nigeria, that you just wake up and remove the sultan.
Yeah.
You know, someone that used to be seen as a spiritual leader of the Muslims in Nigeria, you just wake up and you turn things around like that. And we know how powerful the House of Chiefs were. Think about people like the names you hear, Chief Myong Sien of Urani Yanatapo. The name and the accomplishments of those men as it stood in the House of Chiefs in those days. So you had them having their constitutional rights to operate. And if you ask me, if we were running the 1963 Constitution, I would say, in my own opinion, that you will not have the kind of insecurity that we are having in the country. Think about these Boko Haram issues that we are having. Think about the fact that the traditional rulers have put in so much effort to maintain peace and orderliness in communities that, you know, they are fighting against the tide. When you think of it, that politicians are struggling with the traditional rulers for space in Nigeria. Those are misnomers that shouldn't be in our traditional system. We shouldn't have lifted a constitution. If you think back to say that we had a very strong traditional system before these constitutional issues began to reign in Nigeria, then what would have happened now would have been that the traditional institutions were supposed to be better strengthened than what it is now. So when you say you bring governance to the grassroots should have already be the traditional systems in government. If you know how much the traditional system has helped governance in Nigeria, even as it is today that they don't have constitutional rights, they are still being very useful. So those are things that, if for his submission here, amendments.
But from what you're saying, should we be aiming for a complete overhaul or a gradual reform?
Complete overhaul.
Complete overhaul?
Yes, complete overhaul of the constitution. If you want to get it right, don't forget how this constitution came to be. I was coming through it from history. I would have spoken to you about what happened in 1975 that gave rise to the formation of what we now call the 1999 constitution. It was a military concept. Imagine people that may not have been so vested in the politics of a nation, may not have had so much expertise in developing a constitution, and they did the constitution as if they were developing a decree, and you just command system. You know, by the way, when we talk about the value-based system, it's a direct opposite of the authoritarian system of governance. That is, you have a way of encouraging people to bring out the best in them. When you talk about leadership in that way, understand leadership in that way, then you will know that there is a form of leadership that will give you the best in leadership and will drive productivity in every sense of it, drive creativity, bring forth innovation in areas that organizations adopt it and do far better than other organizations. So when a staff makes a mistake in the workplace, you look at more the intention than the act or whatever loss the company has suffered. So you don't really go to condemn and say, oh, what you made us suffer a loss of 100,000 naira. But you see the intention behind it. And when you understand it from that way, you would also see that the staff is likely to be more encouraged, motivated to do better, that you are not blaming the staff so much for the mistakes that he has made. So also in governance, in citizenship versus government role, it would be understood better that those in government can drive better performance, can drive better productivity, can encourage creativity if they adapt the value-based system and make things work in a particular way. But I'm not really soliciting for the value-based system. I stand for situational leadership. So note that, don't tell me I'm with value-based leadership.
Oh, you're not?
No. Value-based leadership is good. Like I've told you, essentially it has its own weaknesses. You could easily accuse a president. Let me give you an example. Some time ago, I don't want to mention names, a minister was involved in a situation, and the president at that time said they should really look at it very well. They shouldn't jump to a conclusion at what the minister did. And people began to accuse the president of favoritism. That is the downside of value-based leadership, because the president was looking more at the intention of that minister, not really the act that was committed at the time. The president gave us a story at that time and said he had been in a situation where he was accused of something he wasn't guilty of, and he knows what pains that brought to him. So whenever someone comes to accuse someone, whether it is through grapevine or whatever form, that people should take time to investigate before accusation, before punishing, before making the person suffer any form of punishment. So that's the downside of the value-based leadership, that somebody may be accusing leadership of being subjective in their decision making. It could be part of it. But if when we're talking about situational leadership, we are talking about understanding the context, understanding the situation, and making decisions accordingly.
Okay.
In situations like that. Now, talking about the Constitution of Nigeria still, I say to you, the weakness of the Constitution of Nigeria is so obvious. It's everywhere. It faces us every day that we think about it in terms of every form of practices that we are having in Nigeria and how this is really, really affecting us. So if Obama said this constitution that we are having, that it is the main problem of Nigeria, I agree with him totally. Yes, when we are able to change the constitution, like the question you asked me,
the constitution and leadership,
whether you ask a question whether I'm talking about complete overhaul.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I recommend complete overhaul because we have seen successful nations that have gone through this complete overhaul. South Africa did it in 1993, 1944. That's where you talk about interim government. So you introduce an interim government and use that space. That's what we were trying to do in Nigeria when we talk about the constitutional conference. The type of constitutional conference we're doing was different from us deriving an interim government. It was about a government in power running a conference to make changes, certain adjustments or changes in our constitution. But I will think that if we want to overhaul our system, that we should suspend governance in its entirety and set up an interim government, give it a specific time to draw up a constitution for Nigeria. That is when we will have known that this is domesticated, this is our own, that this is born by us. Spain did it in 1975, Romania did it in 1989, Lebanon did it in 1989 too, Bangladesh did it in 1987, Albania did it in 1991, Cambodia did it in 1991. Countries have done it and have succeeded so much at it. Recently, you heard of the situation in Kenya, that you have the interim government running to bring up a different constitution and put the country in the right frame that it should be. China is another example to that. So if we are looking at being sincere about certain changes that we require in this country, then we shouldn't be far from the truth that we need a complete change in the constitution. Every day we wake up to something. There's no aspect of institutional issues that you don't think that we need an overhaul. Look at the judiciary, look at the electoral system. You will know we need a reform. People keep talking about independent candidacy because they have seen the weakness in party primaries and what party primaries have thrown up to us. That is how a governor of a state in this country, Nigeria, woke up and said to us that every candidate was sponsored by him to occupy the House of Assembly.
Yes.
Oh, you remember? So you see, those are things that as a result of the weakness that we have in the party primaries that bring up the kind of leadership that we have. So when you say we are having three arms of government, when you look at it critically, you will see that we don't have three arms of government. We have only one arm of government because of the weakness in the system of checks and balances. When you say what the legislator, the judiciary, the executive, they say introduce the concept of checks and balances. When you look through the concept of checks and balances, it means that all these would have powers to operate. Do they have power? That's why we talk about autonomy for them. So when you don't have autonomy, how do you have when you are financially dependent on one? So how do you say that you can check and balance? What are you checking?
Speaking about power,
how can you balance?
Speaking about power, I'd like to throw in my next question, but this is just to remind the listener that we are streaming live on Facebook and the handle is Memories965FM. Go drop a comment there and it will be read, and we're opening the phone lines right now in case you need to join in on the discussion. The phone numbers are 0803 085 7755, 0803 085 7755, or 0809 066 6909. That number also serves as our WhatsApp number, so I'll take it again, 0809 066 6909. All right, while we're waiting for the calls, speaking about power, some people have argued that the 1999 Constitution centralizes too much power to the federal level, leading to inefficiencies in governance. Now, how can we devolve power to the state or regions without causing disunity?
The devolution of power is one of the key things that we really need in the if we were to have a constitution that will serve for a better productivity in our country. Those are part of the things we talked about: independency of the three arms of government. Talk about the independence of the government. I just spoke about the 2 tiers of police that we require. So you make sure for instance, commissioners of police in a state, they are not reporting to the governors of the states, so they report to the president. That's a misnomer. So if you are making the governor the chief security officer of his state, then he should have a commissioner of police that reports to him.
True.
Then if we are not having that, then we are intentionally centralizing power in the center, too much power in the center. Even in the sharing formula of our resources, we push everything to the center. We make the center too rich, that this understanding that when you have more money, if you have money, that's where you control the people. You have economic power. You are able to control every other thing. Everybody would follow in that line. So the federal government has control over everything. They control the military. Of course they should. But you see, if we were to discuss this and talk about the distribution of power, we are really going to talk more about the resource control of states, which will, on the other hand, also encourage states to be more productive. So instead of just saying we are many in our state, so we are supposed to have more money in our state, you will be talking about how productive you are in your state. That will make you think that you have the money, but create your money by yourself. So we talk about tax. You see people collecting the value-added tax. You see some states in Nigeria say they don't consume certain products, and they are sharing the tax from that product to them to also enjoy. I'm talking about alcohol. Anyway. So if we are running a system like that, you see something is wrong with our tax system. Something is wrong with every aspect of what we are doing. Don't we know what to do? We do. We know what to do, but because we want to pretend as if we are promoting a one Nigeria system, and the other hand, we are encouraging people to be over-dependent on the. So your question, I will simply put it like an answer like, let us allow people to begin to look inwards and depend on themselves for their growth, for their sustenance, so that we would not become lazy, so that we would not become like, when you become too dependent on the center, you are losing. You cannot develop the resources that you even have around you, and that is what we have been experiencing in Nigeria. That is created by the kind of constitution that we are operating. So if we change this constitution, we'll go back to the groundnut pyramids that we used to hear of. We'll go back to those palm fruits that we used to be able to know that, oh, just there is zinc, there is this, and the tin and oil in this and that. But in Nigeria today, all those is lost in our mind, that we don't know again the area of comparative advantage that states have over the other. There's so much complexities and ambiguities in the constitutions that would have informed Obamota's statement that the constitution is the main problem of Nigeria. Look at when we lost our beloved president, Yar'Adua. We were in a jimbo what to do. President Goodluck could not assume power, and Nigeria almost went in pieces because of that event. Thank God for a political solution that was derivable. But these are things that the constitution would have made provision for, and everything would have been very seamlessly progressive at the time as it happened. So no matter how you look at it, from whichever area you look at it, the constitution of Nigeria needs a complete overhaul. A complete overhaul. That is, think about Nigeria as a country, think about the cultural values in Nigeria, and develop a constitution that will match with the cultural circumstances that we are having in Nigeria. Not just relaxing and saying we have a 1999 constitution that is not really working, that is not bringing out the best in us. That's the position of Obamata that I completely support.
All right, we have a message on Facebook. We have a comment rather on Facebook from Smith's Associates saying, "Salute to you, Queen of the Airwaves. I want to state here categorically that leadership is a task. I rest my case. Thanks." But Smith's Associates, I really like to know, this task, is it bigger than us? Because what stated here is leadership is a task. Is it bigger than us?
Sharon, we have beautiful, wonderful, excellent leaders in Nigeria. We have, Okay, when you want to look at leadership, look at the different spheres of leadership. In the family, we have parents that are very excellent and are bringing up their children excellently well. Those are leaders. We have churches that have grown so high. Leaders made the churches to grow in that way. So we have leaders that are running schools in Nigeria and are doing very well. We have leaders in the banking area that are doing well, and their banks, their industries are growing fantastically well. We have various leaders in the area platform. When we talk about leadership efficiency in Nigeria, we are really not looking at the private sector. Those are citizens of Nigeria and they are excellent at it. That's why we talk about the selection process. These people that are not doing well, are not doing what they are supposed to be doing, how did they get there? It's the political electoral system that took them there. It's the political awareness, it's the kind of things that we do, is the constitution of Nigeria that is allowing these things to be the way they are. So if you want to make a change, let us look first at the constitution as a fundamental basis for us to effect a change in the system. We have wonderful individuals. So when they say it's a task, it's a simple task. It's a very minor task, a task that takes nothing. You see in some villages, when the village head changes, a lot of changes comes into that village and the village becomes stabilized. Progress comes into that village. You see peace and maintenance of peace become so easy in that village just because one person is out. Now you have also seen states that the governors have come. I even have an example. People talk about Abia State, for example. If you are a party person, you may agree or not agree. But I'm just using that as an example that if people can say, oh, it is now better, and that had always been. I remember in the 1979 times when we had governors in Nigeria, people may remember back in Zulu in the north that of course everybody saw his performance. I wouldn't want to pass judgment on his performance. We also saw governors in the east like Chief Jim Wobodo in the east that were standing out at the time. But we also remember that there was a governor in Lagos State. Do you remember?
You want to go there? You really want to go there? All right.
Anyway, he deserves a joke on that.
Okay.
He did so well. The housing reforms in Lagos State, you give it to him that he did very well. And we know Dr. Clement is on handle Cross River very well as well.
All right. Well, how do we? You mentioned leaders on the different fronts. First of all, let me announce the phone lines again in case you need to join in on the discussion. The phone numbers are 0803 085 7755 0803 085 7755, and then the second number, which also serves as the WhatsApp number, is 0809 066 6909 0809 066 6909. Alright, our Facebook, we're live on Facebook. The handle is Memories965FM. Go drop a comment. I am on that page. I will read your comment. Okay, and thank you so much to Bob Thompson, Enquiry, Blaze Obot, and OM Okona for your messages on Facebook. Alright, so let's talk about, before we go on our commercial break, Marvel, you've mentioned the leaders on the different fronts of life. How do we bring them out to the position where, you know, we need maximum change? That's the leadership position. Let's take this call from Apostle before we proceed. Good morning once again, Apostle.
Good morning, sir.
Thank you very much, Apostle.
I was thinking it was a politician that was going to call and argue about. Thank you so much, Apostle, for your contribution. As it stands, we all know that we could definitely, like the question Sharon was asking me just before Apostle called, that what can we do to still to have this kind of leaders that would really impact us in the area of productivity or creativity, as we may choose to say. Now, in my own opinion, it starts from the electoral system. It's youth participation is very, very important. A lot of people should wake up and participate, because even though party politics is played the way it is and party primaries are done the way they are, the more the number, the better. Because if you are able to mobilize more people to participate in politics, then education, people have the kind of understanding that they should have, expectations from politicians. You will see that we will begin to have politicians that will take presentation of manifestos more seriously, and they would have people that will hold them accountable for whatever they have in their manifestos. If we have this in place, we are likely going to have a situation where people will begin to sit up in government and know that the electorates, the citizens, they understand. I'm not talking about citizen, my friend. That they understand exactly what is expected of them. So when you are in government and you know the people that voted you in are waiting to hear results.
Yes.
That you told them something before you went in there. That you are expected to
Thank you, Marvel.
This.
Alright, I'd like you to hold that thought. We have a commercial break. When we return, we'll be talking more and picking phone calls. minutes to the top of the hour. What that means is we have 12 minutes left to conclude on the program. All right, before we went on the break, we've been talking about the leadership, the constitution, what needs reform, what needs complete overhaul, and basically the country, how we can move forward. So it's time to hear from you. We've taken a number of calls and a number of messages also on Facebook. Remember that WhatsApp is still open for you to send a message to, and I would definitely be reading it out. I'm here in the studio with Marvel Joseph, and he has been analyzing these topics to the best of his abilities. Now, the first of all, we'll have to pick calls before we go back into the discussion. 0803 085 7755, 0803 085 7755, or 0809 066 6909. Hello, good morning. Good morning to you, Doc. Welcome, talk to us. Thank you. Thank you very much, Udo. Thank you. I believe that this message from Bro John on WhatsApp certainly agrees with what Udo has said. The issue of emerging good leadership qualities can only occur when strong institutions are stronger than politicians. Secondly, it is the electorate that know who they want, not from godfathers controlling the political party, than even the chairman in choosing a successor for the people. Lastly, the electoral process should upgrade their primitive method of voting and look at technological advancements that can allow voters sit at home and vote comfortably without intimidation and vote by. Thank you very much, Bro John. Let's take our last call. Hello, good morning.
Hello,
Good morning and welcome. Welcome, David. There were other people that wanted the president and they went to vote also. We don't know that. You don't. According to what we know with data, people have. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, David. Okay, so Marvel, we have a few seconds left. Let's hear from this last caller and then hear from you. Hello, good morning. Alright, let's quickly wrap up. Marvel, I saw you shaking your head to what Bro John said, and then when David was talking about selflessness. So
yes.
you have a lot to say.
All the callers made good contribution to this discussion. I just want to clarify on what we just said about humanity, the aspect of humanity in leadership. I think that's what the First Lady, an example of what the First Lady meant by the value-based leadership. Like it would require a leader to really be put in a situation where he can make tough decisions, even when the decision is not something that is very favorable for the now, but a decision that is going to be of use in the future. A leader that will stand his ground based on his value of integrity, based on the value of honesty and selflessness. He would go ahead to make and he tightened the noose and make sure that it's not something that can be changed easily. So it puts Nigeria in a very tough situation. That's why I always talk about a complete overhaul of that constitution. I really thank the callers for their contributions to this discussion today.
Thank you very much, Marvel. We have come to the end of the program. I want to thank the callers. Thank you so much for calling. Thank you for sending messages on Facebook and on WhatsApp. We're going to probably continue this conversation tomorrow because we're going to have the melting point tomorrow with Citizen Matthew Kofi O'Connor. Same time, 10 a.m. to 11. It was my pleasure to bring you the morning ride this morning. Thank you so much. And thank you once again, Marvel.
Thank you, Sharon.
It's always
my pleasure.
It's always insightful whenever you're here.
Thank you. Alright,
so my name is Sharon Mandor. It's music for the top of the hour, and then the video belt will continue. Once again, happy birthday to the Oli Adia Care Radio MC Asa. Happy birthday to you.